Prime Minister, Ministers, Special Advisors, Foreign Dignitaries, Excellencies, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to today's program on COP27, Pakistan's Challenges Going Forward. Before we begin, I would like to request Qari Akhtar Saeed Saab to grace this occasion with some verses of the Holy Quran. Qari Saab.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. ارشاد ربانی ہے، زمانے کی قسم بے شک انسان البتہ خسارے میں ہے، مگر جو لوگ ایمان لائے اور اچھے عمل کیے اور انہوں نے ایک دوسرے کو حق بات کی وصیت کی اور ایک دوسرے کو صبر کرنے کی وصیت کی. صدق اللہ العظیم.
After the devastating floods that hit and ravaged Pakistan, Pakistan played a recognized leadership role at the conclusion of the Conference of Parties at Sharm el-Sheikh by bringing about a Sharm el-Sheikh loss and damage finance facility. In the run-up for this, the Ministry of Climate Change had prepared a video that would help convey Pakistan's message at the COP, and I would request that the video be shared with us all right now.
I've seen many humanitarian disasters in the world, but I have never seen climate carnage on this scale. I have simply no words to describe what I've seen today.
The subject of loss and damage was a back burner issue for about 20 years at these Conference of Parties held under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So this year, not only having it brought onto the COP agenda, but then successfully negotiating it is a diplomatic success and an example of Pakistan's leadership at the COP stage. I'd like to now invite our Minister for Climate Change, Madam Shahri Rahman, who had the pleasure of being a member of the delegation. I saw lead from the front, be the first person awake and the last person to go to sleep. Thank you very much for your hard work, Madam. We'd like to have your remarks and thoughts on the loss and damage facility.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Prime Minister Mia Mohammad Shehbaz Shareef, MOS Foreign Affairs, Hina Rabbani Khar, Power Minister present with us, many others, Minister Information who made us do this event, Maryam Aurangzeb. Thank you very much, Excellencies. Thank you for joining us today. Apologies for the delay in your evening's festivities, I'm sure. But thank you for making us do this, Prime Minister, and for making us come together today. Before I thank all those that made one of our key agendas at COP27 achievable, allow me to draw a brief sketch of where we stand today in terms of the resilience challenge that countries like Pakistan face. Because resilience, Excellencies, is what holds the key to a sustainable future, for trajectories of growth and economic stability to yield any dividends for public well-being and progress. I will not be repeating the level of risk that Pakistan faces from climate stress and global warming, as you've seen, as we have already been repositioned by climate change as an epicenter of vulnerability. I think globally, there's no confusion about that. Our entire post-colonial model of development has been upended like the bridges that fell like toothpicks to the angry waters. You saw a very small postcard from that edge on that video tonight. Our concerted public advocacy on climate stress and where we stand on the business of equitable recovery from climate losses with our own limited carbon footprint is also a well-known global statistic after COP27. For that, I thank all my colleagues here. For a country drowning in both floods and debt, the case for climate justice, for loss and damage, is neither an adversarial litigious process for us, nor is it charity. We are quite clear about that. There is no capacity in countries hit by repeated climate disasters to finance both humanitarian relief and rebuilding with resilience. That is the crux of the problem we face. Business as usual is no longer possible, either at home or as a global partner. The UNFCCC position, as you may have read and seen, including the Secretary General's, on climate justice is also quite clear. It strongly makes a case for countries from the global south to seek a rebalancing of resources from the global north. Why it does that is also obvious. It says that the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities must apply to all in working to achieve joint goals. Now, multilateral systems have no funds of their own. We know that, to draw from. Obviously, they need support from the wealthy and the developed. While that may sound simple, the climate justice model applies an equitable, not equal, distribution of global resources for countries in the front line of global warming, like we are today. Who are the other countries? These are, apart from Pakistan, countries like the small island states who first brought up the agenda of loss and damage 30 years ago. These are, and then there are, of course, the less developed countries and countries from Africa where the suffering from the Horn, from the drought-induced hunger in Somalia is particularly tragic and acute even now as we speak. This involves countries from the Latin American group as well, along with other subnational groups who have historically suffered damages from other countries' emissions. All of us have one thing in common, all these countries. Climate stress is resetting our entire national agendas and capacity to face the 21st century. Do we have that capacity? This is a moot point. To face the 21st century or even this decade with adequate food, water, access to livelihoods with dignity and rights that we take for granted. They are all up in the air. Things are not going to remain stable in many parts of the world if this level of climate stress is not addressed in resilience rebuilding. So while climate vulnerability may be the new normal, we also do not expect climate vulnerability to become a death sentence, because that is what it has become for many all over the world. That is a fact hiding in plain sight, and it is important for us to face this fact. Resilience, ladies and gentlemen, is also a race against time. For many of us, we will not have a full decade, and there is, for instance, the Maldives, who will not have a full decade to face or survive rising sea levels, which is precisely what you see in the south of Pakistan, in Sindh today, where lakes the size of the UK have formed in the aftermath of the catastrophic floods that have left many parts of our country, its topography, and the lives and livelihoods of 33 million people impacted forever. The one piece that is missing, the one thing that can bridge the gap between survival and extinction for many, is the bridge of financing. It is no silver bullet, but it is the difference between subsistence and sustainability. That dilemma is very clear. Every single rupee for rebuilding with resilience, even funds that come via the climate ministry, are regularly repurposed now to service humanitarian needs on the front line, because that is the climate shock the country is sustaining. So many countries like Pakistan now are in a cycle where we are feeding the humanitarian need, we are barely recovering, we have no funds to fight back with resilience or build back with resilience, like we are constantly told, and we have the next disaster. We have the next climate catastrophe. So it is a vicious cycle. It is afflicting many countries, and it is becoming what is known as a new climate normal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is just not acceptable. As the Prime Minister said, what goes on in Pakistan will not stay in Pakistan is the only certainty, because one ecosystem, when it collapses, takes down another, then another, then another. We can build arcs of privilege for some of ourselves, for others, recede to colder climates, but that is also not sustainable. So clearly, we need a reset. The rest, frankly, is all talk. $30 billion for loss and damages for Pakistan just for this flood are clearly needed. the estimates are not drawn by ourselves, they're drawn by the World Bank and our other partners, 348 billion USD are needed according just to the World Bank's new country climate development report for Pakistan to become resilient and to survive 2030. As you can see, this is a dangerous and decisive decade for us. We will have to take the actions needed, and we will be seeking assistance and support from all those who have come to us as friends, as donors, as sympathizers, and as partners in all our endeavors. Where these amounts will come from is a question that can only be addressed together at different forums. The key word is together. The one thing I do repeat is that strategic drift is not an option. Making no decisions, not coming together to address the problems as a global community is not an option. It poses grave dangers for those of us living on the edge. And we are clearly living on the edge. We are clearly on the ground zero of vulnerability. And as the UN Secretary General says, we cannot sleepwalk into the existential climate crisis anymore, because that is exactly what's going on. Conflicts divide countries, but the climate challenge drove Pakistan to lead this initiative, both formally from the Prime Minister's office and from the Foreign Minister and his group of negotiators working with us day and night, and the climate and civil society teams, such as the moderator Rafi Alam that you saw, who worked with us throughout for no gain, no advantage, but actually stayed on to assist at their own expense whenever the COP was extended, as you know. It was a perfect team effort when the stars aligned, if you like, to bring the loss and damage agenda to its first step on a long journey. I say this is a first step because that is what it is. This is what brought climate vulnerable countries together over long nights of Zoom conferencing with different groups on how we plan to take our business to COP27. I'm very grateful to the Foreign Minister, who could not be with us tonight, for making sure that it was put on the agenda. Until this particular COP, until Glasgow, loss and damage was a discussion item, never came up on the formal agenda. So it's a particular triumph for Pakistan, but for all the countries that supported us, despite being not exactly friends all the time, but worked with us in a spirit of perfect unity and harmony. So thanks goes to them and to our own teams. This is also what we can bring to the table for sorting how to go forward. Right now, it's gone into a transitional committee, which will report back at the next conference. Their work is cut out for them. Climate diplomacy has a unique way of bringing friends, enemies, rivals together in one room, and there is only the hegemony of seeking solutions, which is what worked, like poetry this time. And I really have to say, I won't name any countries here, but suffice it to say, the hope that arose, just the hope that arose from the political will of achieving joint outcomes when it seemed completely, every night it seemed impossible. Then the flurry of bilaterals, the messaging outside, the grandstanding, the elbow twisting, all of that went on. It went on for 16 long days and many, many months before that. So it is something that we can achieve. It tells us that the global community, when it sets its mind, can get there. And clearly the global community needs now, not just the G77 plus China, to negotiate a new financial reset for developing countries. It needs to take leadership and take us into the 21st century without fear of constant catastrophe hitting us as vulnerable communities, as countries with not enough resources, and a discussion on loss and damage that is not able to provide the funds that we need to recover and rebuild. Now, when the final deal, I want to just mention, was reached between all the blocs in the blue zone, It was early morning. The green zone was where all our country pavilions and civil society, development partners, the World Bank and the UN pavilions operated for 14 days to bring powerful advocacy to bear on the negotiations. The Pakistan pavilion had the privilege of hosting the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister along with the UN Secretary General to take us through the 2 weeks of further constant, relentless advocacy. Again, I thank Rafi Alam and all our team at the Climate Ministry for that. As it stands, finally, ladies and gentlemen, loss and damage is at the core of our discussions as we enter a dangerous era of unpredictable climate risks to our people, our country, and our economy. The video you just saw telegraphed a tiny fraction of the scale and magnitude of the human suffering that non-traditional threats can bring to the ground with little warning. Once again, we thank the Secretary General for his powerful championing of Pakistan's case for climate justice, which he did repeatedly by coming here to the heart, making the heart to the journey of the ground zero, as well as the Egyptian presidency of the COP for delivering on the implementation COP that they promised. I thank my own Prime Minister for support constantly, and our exhausted teams, as well as all those negotiators who joined here. For special mention, I want to add Mariam Aurangzeb, who was on the phone with us, and Ambassador Nabil Munir. He's our ambassador in South Korea, but he joined us for a relentless round of very able steering of the group of 77 plus China. We worked together through many nights, and I think we came away with what was a story of hope and, well, a long journey ahead of us. Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen, will continue to keep 1.5 alive as we commit to our mitigation targets and also to seek a national adaptation plan as a core commitment to local climate resilience. The only real lag will be climate financing, as you all know. For that, we will continue our work. Winter is already here. Do not leave us alone to suffer its growing climate storms. Thank you very much.
Well, the Ministry of Climate Change ably worked through the Conference of Parties, Madam Minister hosting over 25 meetings with ministers from other countries. It was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the months running up to the Conference of Parties, leveraging its position as chairman of G77 plus China to really put this matter onto the agenda globally and on COP as well. We're here joined by the Honourable Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ms. Hina Rabbani Khar. I'd like to invite you, Madam Minister of State, to please give your remarks about the COP and Pakistan's resilience challenges.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a good evening to everyone, Honorable Prime Minister, colleagues, ministers, parliamentarians, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The recently concluded COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh was a landmark event, not because it had the highest number of participants that ever attended a COP, but because it was able to deliver on something that the developing countries had been pursuing over 3 long decades, a fund for loss and damage suffered by the most vulnerable countries due to climate impact, and much of that impact not of their own making. Once operationalized, inshallah, in UAE next year, this fund is envisaged to support developing countries like Pakistan, which are severely and frequently hit by climate-induced disasters in their reconstruction and rehabilitation efforts. Let me say at the very outset that we do not consider this a success of the global South alone. We consider this to be a success of all climate warriors everywhere, all climate justice seekers everywhere, both in the global North and in the global South. Creation of this fund will overcome the North-South trade deficit, which has so far impeded progress in achieving many climate objectives that we could have easily achieved together in much better time. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to remind anyone in this room, climate is truly an existential threat to all of humanity. It doesn't know class, creed, color, nationality, geographical boundaries, historical realities, nothing. It just knows what it knows. Excellencies, the Prime Minister of Pakistan and the Foreign Minister participated endlessly in many leaders' summits, especially the one that was hosted by the President of Egypt to create political will for an ambitious outcome of COP27, which was termed by the Egyptian presidency as the implementation COP. The summit was attended by 120 heads of government and heads of states. Now, during the wide-ranging engagements and expansive outreach to counterparts in the summit, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, together with the Climate Change Minister, extensively highlighted the devastation caused by the floods in Pakistan and the immense losses that we have suffered in the process. Stressing on Pakistan's key priorities, we particularly called for concrete measures and ambitious actions to address climate-induced loss and damage in developing countries. Upon return from Sharm el-Sheikh, the Foreign Minister remained fully engaged with our negotiating team at COP27, as well as important players in the international media, to maintain the political momentum that was built towards a tangible outcome on this account. Even much before the COP, the Foreign Minister undertook vigorous climate diplomacy. While drawing global attention to the flood devastation, the Foreign Minister made concerted outreach efforts with the leaders from developing South and like-minded countries of the developed North for building consensus towards a meaningful outcome on loss and damage financing. In this context, he visited UN headquarters in New York, Washington, D.C., Berlin, where on all these capitals and cities, he fought the climate battle. Excellencies, securing agreement on the establishment of Loss and Damage Fund was our core objective at the COP. We felt this urgency, as you can imagine, was even felt more rigorously after the floods that hit us in the summer. Our strategy to achieve this was grounded in strong political will, demonstrated right from the top, and commitment, and it was informed by science and extreme climate threats and challenges which has been faced by Pakistan. Now, as Minister for Climate Change mentioned, the stars were truly aligned, and the stars always have to be aligned for humanity and for the global North-South together to be able to achieve anything in the world. You know, God has to bless us with his special blessings for us to be able to do what had seemed impossible for 3 long decades. Pakistan had the chair of G77 plus China, and I think that played a major, major role. Pakistan's role was crucial, both in the run-up to and during the COP. We were entrusted to secure the shared objectives and create bridges with our partners to forge agreements. I'm glad that we were able to deliver on the expectations of this very, very demanding group. Let me take you very quickly through this journey. The spade work was done at the official level within the G77 and China for seeking a specific COP agenda item of loss and damage financing. Then, as chair of G77 and China, foreign ministers meeting, the foreign minister chaired a meeting which was in September in New York, where we agreed to pursue this matter as a priority for COP. After arrival at the COP, Pakistan steered the group in securing inclusion of the item on financing loss and damage in the COP's agenda for the first time in 3 decades. I think this was the first big win. This inclusion was only agreed among all parties after protracted negotiations which were concluded hours before the inaugural session. Adoption of the agenda was the first step to initiate formal discussion on the creation of the dedicated fund. After 2 weeks of intense negotiations that the climate minister has so eloquently put in front of us, consensus was finally reached on the establishment of the fund for addressing loss and damage. The COP had to be then extended for 2 days amid the deadlock in negotiations. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that the creation of this fund is widely recognized as the major outcome of COP27. And now, as I thank Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry of Egypt, the president of COP27, for his constructive role during the entire process, let me also appreciate and acknowledge the flexibility and understanding demonstrated by our developed country partners, many of them represented by their ambassadors here, which did lead to a meaningful outcome. This was truly a win-win. Finally, we agreed to agree rather than agreed to disagree for 3 long decades. Excellencies, unity among the developing countries was crucial. Pakistan made hectic efforts to keep the G77 and China united. We thank all developing countries for their consistent support and confidence in Pakistan's chairmanship of this largest bloc of developing nations. Whereas the leadership was clearly provided by the Foreign Minister, I want to appreciate the hard work and dedication that our 7-member core negotiating team from the Foreign Office did. I call them the unsung heroes. And I want to mention over here that we are very proud at the Foreign Office to have come up with this methodology of making sure that no matter where in the world they were serving, the core climate experts team continued to be engaged with the climate process throughout. So this is now an island of excellence that we've created within the Foreign Office, which continues on this work. This team was most ably led by Ambassador Nabil Munir, the chair of the G77 in China. And being Pakistan's lead negotiator, also I think his role was unparalleled in what he was able to do. He was supported by Director Generals Farooq Iqbal Khan and Noman Bashir Bhatti, Director Jawad Ali, Councillor Imran Khan, First Secretary Ali Waqas, and Deputy Secretary at the Prime Minister's Office, Haseeb Gohar. So the Prime Minister's Office also had a contribution to it, to the technical team. They worked tirelessly to ensure that COP27 did not end without the creation of a dedicated loss and damage fund. Pakistan's permanent representative at the UN, Ambassador Munir Akram, also remained engaged during the entire process. I wanted to specifically take the names because these people remain engaged with this process even before the coming and going of various annual COPs. They remain consistently involved with this process. Our Minister for Climate and Change, Ms. Shahbaz, her role has been pivotal, well celebrated, well acknowledged. But I do want to also mention the many experts in the climate ministry who worked with her, and obviously not forget the other unsung heroes and sometimes sung heroes, the people who from various NGOs and from the civil society who have been at it. So Pakistan really, a force came together with many, as I say, all streams falling together and the river finally running through it. Most importantly, let me take this opportunity to thank the person who steered the ship of this country, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Without his robust leadership, constant guidance, and constant, really allowing everyone to feel like they owned it and providing the ownership and the leadership, he enabled this diplomatic success. And today's event and him chairing it and hosting it is a demonstration of the leadership that he provides to this, has continuously provided to this process. Ladies and gentlemen, let me end by saying that the establishment of this fund and the constitution of the Transitional Committee is just the beginning, as has been mentioned by the Climate Change Minister also. Much is still needed to be done. We hope that the Transitional Committee would complete its work to operationalize the fund at the next COP in UAE. It is equally important, and I want to emphasize over here, that once operationalized, it is resourced to support the developing countries hit by climate-induced disasters. This would truly be a welcome signal from the global north to the global south. This will also be a signal which will build the confidence and trust that has been missing in action for far too long. Pakistan will remain engaged, deeply engaged, to make sure that this fund that we have only helped create with all our developing partners and developed world, that we see it to its fruition, inshallah, and to make it a success. Cooperation and collaboration, let us not forget, our friends, must remain the hallmark of our endeavors.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister of State. The stars may have been aligned, but what I find remarkable is that these catastrophic floods took place not 6 months ago. And what we have seen is coordination amongst ministries at the international level to bring almost something that was a dream into reality. This takes vision, and it takes commitment, and it takes leadership. And this, I think, we found in you, Mr. Prime Minister, and I'd like to invite you now to please give some remarks, Mr. Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable ministers, parliamentarians, ambassadors, high commissioners, excellencies, government officials, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening to appreciate the efforts of Government of Pakistan, politicians, experts, bureaucrats, provincial governments for achieving something which was almost well-nigh impossible. I will not repeat what Muhtarma Shahriman Sahiba or MOS Hina Rabani Khan Sahiba has already conveyed to you, because it will be a repetition, and I wouldn't want to come in the way of your wonderful dinner you're going to have with your families and in hotels and wherever. I wish you a wonderful evening. But let me say very candidly that it all started back in June this year, when Pakistan faced the most devastating floods, and as a result, 33 million people were affected. 1,800 people died, including children, and loss of agriculture, industry, infrastructure, livestock, and the estimate is about $30 billion. In that, I would like to avail of this opportunity to once again express my deep gratitude to all those countries who came to help Pakistan at that point in time with kind and cash. Some of the reps sitting in front of me, I know them by their faces. Some are not here. But I want to say in no uncertain terms that this contribution on your part was most valuable in this hour of need. And then, of course, within Pakistan, philanthropists, they came forward and contributed immensely to support our brothers and sisters in Sindh and Balochistan and other parts of Pakistan. And then, of course, provincial governments did a remarkable job, particularly the government of Sindh, led by Chief Minister Shah Sahab, and in Balochistan, Chief Minister Bazunjo Sahab, and of course, other provincial governments as well, along with NDMA and PDMAs. And what Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto was able to reflect at international forums, along with Shahri Rahman Sahiba, and a remarkable job done by our Information Minister to make all this happen, was a reflection of what provincial governments and these institutions had done back home during those trying months, June, July, August, September. Those of you who have been to these places, I know our foreign friends have been there. It was nothing but sea flowing all over. And houses and villages and cities completely inundated, submerged. And at that time, the people of Pakistan, federal government and provincial governments and related institutions did a remarkable job. And it is for the first time that international forum, through a dedicated teamwork, Pakistan's voice was heard, loud and clear. Loss and damage was something like a sleeping beauty for decades. But for the first time, it was articulated most ably by our team, led by Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto, by Mohtarama Shahri Rahman Sahiba, and she did a terrific job at Sharm el-Sheikh, and I am a witness to all this. Bilawal Bhutto made a fantastic job as Foreign Minister, interacting with his counterparts, trying to convey the message that we are seeking justice and not charity. Ladies and gentlemen, I have deliberately avoided, and we have completely avoided using the word reparations, because that is harsh, that is not proper, that is not sagacious, it is not diplomatic parlance. But certainly we are seeking justice, because what has happened to us, I hope and pray to Allah Almighty, won't happen to any other country in times to come. But what Shahri Rahman Sahib has said, she has put words in my mouth, it's her words, that what has happened in Pakistan will not stay in Pakistan. And this, unfortunately, is hard and harsh truth. And therefore, our friends in global north, they should, and they have, realized the importance of this challenge. And that's why it's been a remarkable agreement in Sharm el-Sheikh. Loss and damage is now a reality. But then, it's not about these agreements and understandings. It's about practical implementation, manifestation of these commitments. What has happened in the past is past. $100 billion were committed, but to what level these have been contributed is a big question mark. Therefore, I would make use of this opportunity. It is purely a ceremony, believe me, not to extend our bowl, because we are not extending our bowl. One day soon we are going to get rid of it. But this is something different. Pakistan has become victim of something which we have nothing to do with. Our contribution in these greenhouse gases is less than 1%. And then we can go on and discuss a host of list of countries where emissions are much higher than they had committed at various forums. But I wish, and you would all want to pray to Almighty that this should not happen to other countries. But that's a wishful thinking. Unless and until we stand up and accept the challenge and make practical demonstration of our commitments globally. I would like to place on record my deep appreciation to all those government officials, be in Foreign Office or Ministry of Climate Change, our diplomats, expert in this field, Ministry of Economic Affairs, Ministry of as Nepal's Ministry, Planning, thank you, Minister of Information, and each and every Pakistani who has contributed in making the world realize that what has happened to us, and this must not happen to any other country, and that we are seeking justice and not charity. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, I had desired to hold this ceremony just to acknowledge your teamwork, splendid work, and outstanding performance at various forums. Unfortunately, our Foreign Minister could not join us because of some technical fault in the plane which was carrying him to Islamabad, and some other ministers who are probably busy in some very other productive meetings, and I can understand that. All of them have done a remarkable job, and Rafi Alam, I have a lot of respect for him, not because he has been my friend, rather he has been criticizing my job in Punjab as Chief Minister, but I have found in him a man who speaks truthfully and really comes across somebody who has pain for this country and who wants to do something for improving conditions, living conditions in Pakistan. Much later, we became friends, although we meet sparingly. He then headed as chairman of Punjab Lahore Waste Management Board, and then he saw for himself what a remarkable job he did in waste management. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful evening. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to my ambassadors and high commissioners sitting here who've been great friends of Pakistan and who've done remarkable contribution to see Pakistan going forward as a democratic dispensation and improving its lot through untiring efforts. Thank you very much. Pakistan Zindabad.
Mr. Prime Minister, Excellencies, this concludes our program on COP27 and beyond, Pakistan's Resilience Challenge. Aapka bahut bahut shukriya. There is dinner for all of you as well. Thank you all very much.